me, of the three guys, Grant is on vacation in Maine. Ethan is doing Ethan things, I guess we could say. He had some other engagements going on. So I had to call in the big guns. We had him on probably about 2 years, a little bit over 2.5 years ago, a long time ago, probably waited way too long. But one way or the other, we found our way back. He's back with us. It is the Ross Brendel, host of Minnesota Sports Chat, among all the other jobs that he has. He still occasionally has time to pump out a podcast talking all things Minnesota sports. And that's kind of going to be what the show rundown is today. Is we're going to just talk about the state of Minnesota sports. We're going to talk about some Gophers, some Vikings, Twins, Wolves. There's a big golf event coming up in Minnesota next week. And yeah, so Ross, welcome back on. How's the summer going? I know Minnesota has some great summers. Are you a guy that likes to hang out at the lake, or what are some favorite summer activities that you like to enjoy?
Well, first off, thank you for having me back. It is the three guys minus two plus one buffoon that you bamboozled into being here today. So I guess that makes two. I appreciate that. Here's my line on summer. I love everything about summer other than the weather. I love going to baseball games. I love grilling. I love to golf. I love to walk around lakes and rivers. I love to go hiking. The moment it's above 80 degrees, I am the most miserable person you will meet in the state of Minnesota. I hate cold weather. I hate warm weather. I can only live in a climate between like 40 and 70 degrees.
Oh,
So,
that's not a bad way to live. I will disagree that I can handle the heat for the most part. I've learned as I've gotten older. I just turned 30 back in January, and I've learned that if I don't hydrate myself properly, the body does catch up to you. And if I don't hydrate, I turn into a headache, and it's like, well, even if it's a Friday, it's like, nope, sorry, I'm going to bed,
yep.
type of thing. But I uh, I enjoy golfing. That's kind of what my big summer activity is. I play softball on Tuesday nights. We actually just had our big softball tournament in Dickinson over the weekend, and it was that you talked about not liking heat. You can book it that the Miller Lite softball tournament is going to be the hottest weekend of the summer. Saturday it's 95 degrees. Sunday it's 95 degrees, and depending, it worked out the last couple of years where we played right away in the morning. We played at 8 and we played at 10:20, but then make we hang out there all weekend, and there's some other extracurricular activities that are included, and it it catches up, and I don't recuperate like I used to, and it can make for some rough Sundays.
84 degrees, no humidity. I am just fine. My complaint about Minnesota, and I'm going to guess it's got something to do with the 11,782 lakes, whatever the number is. It's always humid. If it can just be 85, I can live with that. But when it's 85 and 72% humidity, I'm just fine sitting on my couch watching whatever random baseball game I can find. And I have no problem admitting that. I will tough it out. I'm a big 13,000 plus step a day guy. That's my goal. So I will tough it out to get my steps. But the moment I've reached my steps, I'm done and I'm on to sports viewing.
Yeah. Well, so since you're talking about sports viewing right now, there was quite a bit of controversy. Suppose we'll start with the current sports season that we're in. The All-Star game just wrapped up. The break concludes. So the last night of the break. Games resume tomorrow. Twins, I believe, are going to Colorado, playing the Rockies, if memory serves. Or did they already play the Rockies?
No,
they play the Rockies.
You are correct. They're at Colorado. They're at Colorado,
Okay.
and then they go at LA. So my joke has been, get your 3 in Colorado because you know the inevitable sweep against the Dodgers is coming. So I believe it's a 9 game. No, I think it's 6 on the road. Then they get the Nationals. So if they can go, I know you want to talk All-Star game, but if the Twins can go 6-3 in the next 9, I think that bodes well for them. But yeah, we can start with the All-Star game. What do you got there?
I thought both of the Twins All-Stars performed well. Uh, I thought that it was cool to see Buxton go home, get a double, help extend the lead to the American League. And then I don't know about you, but as soon as Dave Roberts said that Kyle Schwarber was going to be batting second in the home run derby, I knew instantly. I was like, oh, he's going 3 for 3, and that's how the National League is going to win this game. But what did you think of the swing off?
Here's the thing. Excuse me. On the Major League Baseball All-Star game, I've had like this radical up and down roller coaster ride with it. I think everybody does. As a kid, I thought it was the coolest thing. I still think it's very cool. I think it's more cool before the game even happens, just to see your players out there. Thank God they're back in their own uniforms. All is right with the world.
Oh,
I'm glad. I'm
yes.
I'm glad maniacal Manfred fixed that. It's about maybe it was a bad thing, but he made it a good thing by coming back to normal. So at least it's a net neutral. Of all the sports to not wear your own uniform, that is the one where it makes no sense to stick them in random uniforms. Baseball already has an identity crisis. Now stick all these world-class athletes in uniforms. People don't even know what they are or who they are. This is great. This is great. Let them wear their uniforms. Back in the day, I loved it. I've always been old school. Probably why I love baseball, right? We talk about all the time. I know you guys have spent some time on this. I think the last time you and I talked with the group, sport that is having a more difficult time getting the younger viewers and getting people involved. However, when they switched after Torrey Hunter, robbed Barry Bonds, and they switched to we're going to now make the game mean something, I hated that. You're now going to decide all-star or home field advantage in the World Series off of one exhibition game where somebody like Mark Redmond from the Kansas City Royals, who has an ERA of almost 5 and his record is 4-8, may end up pitching in that game for the American League. That made no sense to me. I hate it. Hated that. I don't dislike anything now. I really don't. My only thing would be at this point, since it is a true exhibition, and you do want the best of the best to be there. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to water it down, but we probably should let more people in from the get-go. Case being a couple things. There should probably be just a utility role. Willie Castro got in last year from the Minnesota Twins. He deserved to be there, but he had to wait for players to get injured to get in. Explain to me how Joe Ryan wasn't just named with the All-Stars right away. At the time, he had an ERA of under 3, top 10 in the league in strikeouts. He's not good enough to be an All-Star. That makes no sense to me. So at some point, if we're going to continue to do this where every team needs to be represented, and I believe that every team should be represented, well, then why can't we just bring 40 guys? Not everybody needs to play, but let's at least let them be trotted out there, with their team, let their fan base see them. As far as the home runoff, whatever. My biggest fear is that they'll turn this into an actual game thing down the road, and I don't want that. But for an all-star game, whatever, have fun with it. I had zero problem with it. So no, none whatsoever. And I agree with what you said. I think the Twins are happy no matter what, because when you talk about Joe Ryan, it's a player they may or may not be interested in trading here in the next few weeks. So it's a nice way for him to get a showcase. If not, and he's still a member of the Twins on August 1st, what a great way for him to soak up some of the other knowledge from all the other pitchers that were there. Just soak up some knowledge and be around those guys. Buxton, I think we all knew he could do this. We've seen it before. We've always seen flashes of it. So my buddy, mentor, I guess, to a degree, Patrick Royce said it on one of the Score North pods this week. It's literally one of the greatest comeback stories in Twins history. Now, we all hope he stays healthy for 2 more months and can finish it off, hit 30-plus home runs, steal 30-plus bases, maybe hit near 300. I think we all hope that that's the case. But this is great. I mean, if you're a fan of baseball, you have to enjoy what Byron Buxton's doing, even if maybe you don't like the Twins. Maybe you're a White Sox fan. Maybe you're a Guardians fan. But the human element of Byron Buxton, I think we can all cheer for on an athletic level. Everything that he's gone through. He's only played over 100 games twice in his career. He's played the big league since 2012. That's incredible. I mean, think about that.
Yeah, if I do remember though, there was like a point in time, like when I was younger and kind of when they were doing the Like I remember like when Francisco Liriano made the team after some guys that were injured or backed out at the last minute, and he was on the team, but he never got to play. I remember there were a few other
Yep.
team situations where it has happened. I think now it's a lot of just checking boxes for those guys, you know, and to their point, if they're there, they're going to want to play. They're competitors and all of that. So, I mean, just to get there to say you played, um, it would be cool to see kind of guys come back and return to games, like especially if it gets into crunch time, like a Shohei Ohtani after it's tied up, seeing him walk up to the plate and try and go hit a home run. I think that would be something interesting, especially because at the end of the day, it is an exhibition, it is an all-star game. But a lot of those guys, they once they play however long, they usually a lot of them don't even finish the rest of the game. They get in their cars and go back to wherever and enjoy their break because it really is their only time that they have that off season. But you know, talking about the Twins, I guess that's just a smooth transition over, you know, with the trade deadline approaching here. And I think I think we'll have a good idea of what the Twins are going to do going forward as far as how they come out. Like if they take care of the Rockies like they should, they take care of the Nationals like they should. If they can win even a game against the Dodgers in LA, that is a 8-2, 7-3. If they go 7-3, I think they're going to still be in the thick of that playoff hunt for making the wild card because I think the division shot. There's no way they're going to be making a push for that. Detroit's too far out. But I think if they are able to if they're able to go 7-3, 8-2, I think there's plenty of reason for them to stand pat and maybe be a buyer at some point along the trade deadline. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on what if they were to be buyers, who would be what would be something they'd be looking for to add.
Well, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. In the next 9 games, you go at Colorado, at LA, and then you're home against the Nationals. So if you try and parse that out, I would never say you need to sweep any team. Even looking at the Rockies, statistically, they're getting close to winning about 25% of their games, but you should, at bare minimum, win 2 out of 3, probably all 3. Same with the Nationals. So let's say that's what? Let's give them 4-2. They take 2 out of 3 from both. Okay, so you beat the Dodgers. You're 5-4. You're probably still kind of in that same area now. 10 days from now, right up against the trade deadline. Okay, where are we at? You go 6-3 or better. Well, now maybe you're only 2 games out of a wild card spot. I have a theory here, and I could be wrong. I'm like a lot of people who just prognosticate and are around sports and talk about sports. I'm probably wrong more than I'm right. Logically, though, I don't believe the Twins will be big time buyers, nor will they be big time sellers. If anything, I think they will be soft buyers and soft sellers. And the reason is ownership. Ownership is not
Yeah, that
going
was
to.
going to be my next
Yep.
question.
Ownership is not going to want to take on a lot of money. Will they take on $1 million, $2 million here and there? I think they might do that. Don't forget they just bought the kid from the Dodgers. They bought Cody Clemens, and I get it. These aren't bazillion-dollar contracts, but that is more money than you were expecting to shell out at the beginning of the year. I also don't think you're going to have a massive sell-off at the time you're trying to sell the team. I think if you're blown away for Joe Ryan, I think they're listening because I think you have to listen. If you're blown away, I think they may trade him. I still put that at 20%, and that's probably even a little bit high. When I talk about soft selling, that's probably, let's call it a week and a half from now. You're still 5 games out of the wild card spot. It's July 29th. Trade deadline's July 31st. Okay, soft sell, who is that? That's Harrison Bader on a 1-year contract. You take whatever you can get for him. That's Danny Coulomb, the lefty specialist, who's had a hell of a year. I think his ERA is still below 1, and he's approaching 30 innings pitched. He would be gone. Chris Paddock, if his arm doesn't fall off by the trade deadline again, he's probably gone. Ty France, if you can get anything for him, he's gone. Christian Vasquez, if you can get anything for him, he's gone. And it wouldn't surprise me where you would get the most return would probably be a Griffin Jacks or a Johan Duran. And it wouldn't surprise me if one of those two were moved. And I would lean Duran just because Griffin Jacks' year has been very iffy. 6 times out, he's filthy. The 7th time out, I'm just making this up. He blows up, right? He gets 1 out and gives up 3 runs, and you go, this guy's filthy. What is happening here? Victim of bad luck, I think, is second to last time out. He sawed off 2 guys, yet they both get hits. Then one guy gets a legit hit, and all of a sudden he's given up a couple of runs. But I think those are the guys. And when you talk about buying, Dylan, I don't know. Is it another middle reliever? Because I think the bullpen is good, but it's back heavy. Brock Stewart, pretty good. Griffin Jacks, pretty good. Duran, pretty good. Coulomb, pretty good. Sands, up and down. So maybe that's what you're doing because your starting pitching is not in the best shape right now. And what I mean by that is Pablo Lopez. We all think he's going to be back in September. Don't know. Bailey Ober's about to start a rehab assignment. He really hasn't been good all year. When Zebby Matthews comes back, they're probably only going to let him pitch 5 innings a night. Simeon Woods Richardson has been on the 5 innings plan basically all year. About the only guys that they're really letting pitch deep into a game at this point are Chris Paddock, which you kind of wonder, maybe you're playing with fire there with his arm issues, but also maybe you're trying to ride his arm with everything that's left in it before he has an inevitable injury. Again, I hope not, but maybe that's what they're thinking. And Joe Ryan, they've definitely let test the waters later into ball games. So my hunch, Dylan, would be if they buy, it's not going to be anything that blows you away. It's probably just going to be what reliever can they get at a decent cost that they think can help them in the 5th and 6th inning of games. I just don't know where they would buy because ownership has flat out told them basically the last year and a half, you can go get anybody you want. We're not stopping you. But a part of the calculus has to be if you're taking on 20 million, you got to get rid of 20 million. So I think Derek Falvey and Derek Zoll, I think their hands are tied to a degree. So I don't think they're going to stand pat. I think they will decide we're either buying or selling, but I don't think it's going to be a massive fire sale. And I don't think they're going to also, if people remember what these are, I don't think they're going to open up the checkbook and pay in cash and prospects either, because I just don't think they can't until they have clear direction at ownership.
Yeah, and that's kind of going to be my next question here is where is the new ownership at? Like is there expected of a sale soon, or is there going to be a finalization of it, or is that something that's probably going to happen after the season ends?
Well, Rob Manfred said he expects it. I don't want to quote him, but he said at the All-Star break, he expects it to be reasonably soon, somewhere along those lines. I don't know what that means. The Tampa Bay Rays just sold for 1.7. That was allegedly the 1.7 billion. That was allegedly the asking price for the Minnesota Twins. I got to imagine the Pohlad family is looking at the Twins and saying, well, we're more valuable than the Tampa Bay Rays. So I got to imagine they're waiting for at least 1.7 billion. I have no inside knowledge here. I hear things on occasion from people that I work with. My hunch is it will still be sooner rather than later, but I don't know if that's a month from now, if it's the off season. I guess I'd be surprised if the Pohlad family is still the principal owners come opening day or even spring training of next year. However, I wouldn't be surprised if when this thing gets resolved, if the Pohlad family still doesn't retain a share or a stake of the team, but they're not the final decision makers. Maybe they take a step back and they own 20% of the team. Another thing that people don't talk about is oftentimes when somebody buys a team, I'm just going to use Mark Cuban. I know he sold the Mavericks, but oftentimes when somebody buys a team, they're just buying the majority stake. Oftentimes there's 6 or 7 other people who have stakes in the club. So I'm not entirely convinced that the Pohlads are going to 100% get out of the Minnesota Twins business, but I am convinced more so than ever they're going to get out of being the majority owners. And logic would tell you it has to be soon. I mean, this thing was leaked before this season, and darn well now, looking back at how the previous year went, this has been out there and they've been putting feelers. So I mean, this has got to be going on a year and a half, 2 years. They've been trying to unload this ball club, or at least started the process of thinking that they're going to do it. And they're I mean, there's been reporting that they're about a $500 million in debt. So at some point, if they want to pay off that debt, they're going to have to get rid of the ball club.
Yeah. Well, I want to say it happened. It was right around the time the World Series was starting. It was right. I want to say it was like right at the end of middle or end of October was when it was announced that they were going to be putting feelers out, or putting the team up for sale. But who are some of the have you heard of any of the names that are potential people that would be buying the Twins?
This has been kept, unless there's stuff out there that just went right over my head. This has been kept
Because it
fairly
was the
close.
Suns owners, right? I've
Yeah.
heard, right? I've
Well,
heard
one,
that, but other than
yep.
that, I haven't heard anything.
Well, the first guy to the table was the Ishbia brother, I believe the brother of the guy who owns the Suns, and
Okay.
he ended up backing out because I think he increased his stake in the Chicago White Sox, and people believe that at some point he may be making a play to just buy the Chicago White Sox. I don't know if it's going to be local or not. There, Minnesota, it's not a poor state. We all know it. There's a bunch of Fortune 500 companies, but there's also not a ton of billionaires either. So a part of me thinks it might end up being somebody outside the state. But again, I also wouldn't rule out 4 or 5 or 6 rich business owners from the state of Minnesota pooling their funds together. One pools in a bit more, and he's the majority owner. I have zero clue, absolutely zero clue where this thing is headed. My joke has always been, what did Glenn Taylor get for the Minnesota Timberwolves? About $1.5 billion. What do the Twins want for the Minnesota Twins? About $1.5 billion. I don't know. Does Glenn Taylor just walk across the street with this check and say, "Hey, here's your $1.7 billion right here"? But Glenn's also in his mid 80s, so I can't imagine he has the appetite to buy. That's why he was selling the Timberwolves. But I always thought, wouldn't that be a great ruse? He sells the team, then puts up a fight, doesn't want to get rid of it, and then he just walks across the street and buys the other team because he has the cash.
That would set off. I feel like that would set off Minnesota in a frenzy because of. I can't say because I don't know if you remember from the last show we did. I I thought about going back and listening and clipping this, but I do recall you at one point saying that Minnesota, the Wolves are one of the most irrelevant franchises in all
Yeah,
of pro
yeah,
sports.
yep.
And at that point right now, because I don't think Glenn Taylor is the most popular guy in the state of Minnesota. I don't. That would be quite a. There would be some riots in the street. I think
Oh,
if Glenn Taylor bought the Wolves.
yeah, and absolutely. And by the way, Dylan, I will stand by that comment. From 2004 until the time Anthony Edwards was drafted, the Timberwolves were the worst, if not one of the worst franchises in all of the 4 major professional sports. So I will
Yeah,
stand behind, I will absolutely stand behind that. Anthony Edwards has changed that all. And to a degree, Glenn Taylor's the owner of the team at the time. He should definitely get some credit for the turnover. Now, granted, or the turnaround. Granted, a lot of people will tell you he's had very little to do with it, which, okay, that's probably true. But I would also say, as the owner, he can stop anything he wants, and he didn't. So, again, he should definitely get a little bit of credit for that. Probably more of it goes to Alex Rodriguez and Mark Laurie. But if I'm going to rip Glenn Taylor for 20 years, I'll definitely give him a little bit of credit as well for at least not stopping or sabotaging anything for the Minnesota Timberwolves turnaround. Because I don't want to turn this all into Timberwolves if you don't want to go there, but I'm very disappointed in how the 2 Western Conference championships have went. That doesn't mean
hmm
I'm not happy slash borderline thrilled that we're sitting here today. And I'm upset that the Minnesota Timberwolves have lost 2 straight back-to-back Western Conference championships after only going there one time in 30 years. So again, I'm not saying be happy that you lost. I'm not. But also sometimes you do need to understand your lot in life and maybe celebrate the wins. And I still think there's a lot more good basketball and untapped potential in Anthony Edwards, where eventually he may take a team that isn't even as good as the last 2 Timberwolves teams, and he may will them to an NBA Finals appearance. Maybe not a championship, but he may be able to do that, very similar to what LeBron did in his early days with the Cavs. So I'm a big Anthony Edwards guy. I think there's some maturity issues with him. But again, Dylan, who amongst us in our early 20s didn't have maturity issues? Now factor in he has basically $1 billion. You're going to have issues. But as a basketball player, I think the world of him. I hope the things he needs to improve in his game, he takes the time to do that. And I absolutely believe he will, because year over year, he's a better basketball player. And I expect that that's probably going to continue for the next handful of years.
Yeah, the and if we're talking credit about owners, the Pohlads had their flaws too, but they are the only owners in the state of Minnesota that have delivered a championship to the state in the Twins in '87 and '91. But yeah, we can talk some Wolves here, because I too also I'm not a Wolves fan, but I love watching Anthony Edwards play. He's one of my favorite people to watch play. Like, if he's on, I have the TV on in some capacity watching it. And like you said, he's 24, 25 years old. Nobody can sit here and say they made the best decisions when they were that age. I think the big thing with me, I would like to see him more of, and I think this is a hurdle that a lot of young players, and there's some old that still haven't gotten over it, but when things don't go their way, he does have that constant complaining, hands up with the refs, like, what are you like calling? Where instead, just get back and just play defense and get through it. That's the hurdle that I think the Wolves need to get over. The new ownership, they seem to be aggressive, going out and re-signing Randall, re-signing Randall, re-sign Naz Reid, yep. And I think that seeing Nikhil Alexander Walker walk in free agency, I think what it shows is that I think they do have a belief in a guy like a Terrence Shannon, who came off and provided some big minutes for the Wolves in the playoffs. I think they could see him having that type of role that Alexander Walker had. I think Shannon can grow into that. I think the young French kid who was having a really good spring debut, Ethan, on last week's episode, said that he thinks Terrence Shannon Jr. can be the MVP of the Summer League. He had a really good first game. I haven't seen what he's done since, but I think there's still a lot of optimism for the Wolves. It's a shame that they have to play in the West with the abundance of riches that are in that conference compared to the East, which really seems like it is wide open right now between, I think Cleveland's really the only sure thing. I think Orlando, some of the moves that they have made has kind of made them very viable, as long as both those teams are able to stay healthy. The Knicks, new coach, question mark there. The Celtics, Tatum's gone, Halliburton's going to be out. If the Wolves were just a little bit further east, they've got to be licking their chops, thinking, oh, we could go to the finals, but they're going to be playing in the West. They're going to be playing some of the best competition. So it doesn't get any easier, and I still think that they're going to have to try and find a way to add a point guard, because Conley, he provides such a strong leadership, but his age is starting to show, which was also just a mind-blowing moment when they said that he was in the league for 17 years. I was like, damn, I'm old. I remember watching him at Ohio State when I was like 12. Yeah. And now so I guess that makes me old. But, the state of the Wolves, there's a lot of reason for optimism, but it's such an unknown at this point because of how much talent is in the West. Like, what do you project like this next year, where the Wolves can be?
Well, I think you have to look at this a couple different ways. You can look at it right now, and let's just say, for argument's sake, they're largely running it back. I do think the other way you can look at it is Tim Connolly's always thinking about things, and if he finds the right deal, he'll make it, and we'll all probably go, whoa, what the bleep was that? Didn't see that coming. LeBron James is a Minnesota Timberwolf. I'm not saying it's going to be that, but, he's done that with Rudy Gobert, trading Cat for Julius Randle. Even
that might be my headline for this show, Ross.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Could LeBron James be a Minnesota Timberwolf?
Well, until he's back with the Lakers or traded somewhere else, I guess it could technically technically happen. But let's assume that they are largely running it back, correct? And maybe just insert veteran point guard that they got to sign for the veterans minimum of what they have left, which is roughly $4 million. Let's just assume that. Well, what do they have going in their favor? One, to your point, great point. I think everybody expects Terrence Shannon Jr.'s role to be increased. And I think we all expect that he'll be a pretty good player for them. I think everybody largely expects that Dante DiVincenzo will be better in year 2 with the Minnesota Timberwolves than he was in year 1. Again, you can logically assume whether he gets 1% better or 10% better, Anthony Edwards will be better next year than he was this year. So you look at all that, and let's just assume health. There's reason to believe that the Wolves can be back in the Western Conference Finals. I start to worry about what does that do to your body when you've already made 2 long playoff runs, and now you're being asked to do it again, and you're bringing in very limited new players. Also, let's assume, I'm not convinced of this, but let's assume they get more out of Rob Dillingham. Maybe that helps with taking pressure off of Mike Conley. The one thing that I would say is I value Mike Conley's leadership, and I get why they gave him a contract extension. I personally would have not given him a contract extension when they did. I get he's the Rudy Whisperer, and I understand that. They work well together, but I just don't think paying him what they're paying him to now probably play 15 to 20 minutes a night is a good use of resources. But where do the Wolves stack up? Again, to your point, Dylan, I'm not sure it matters where you finish anymore in the West. If you're the 2 seed, I think you want to avoid playing in the play-in. But if you're anywhere 1 through 6, I think anybody 1 through 6 getting matchups can make a run to the conference, or excuse me, to the NBA Finals. I would say this year, I'm not taking anything away from the Timberwolves. Nothing. They did exactly what you're supposed to do. But for the Wolves to get back to the Western Conference Finals this year for the second year in a row, I don't think their path could have been set out any easier. That Lakers team had 2 players, legitimately 2 players. Not good. The only people that thought the Lakers were going to beat the Timberwolves were national media and Lakers fans. And the Wolves did what they were supposed to. They took care of the Lakers. Then you get a Warriors team that legitimately, without Stephen Curry, could have won 18 games this year. So
what they had like a rugby guy or a guy that played rugby that was giving them minutes in the first 2 games.
Yes.
And he was cooking them in game 1.
But Dylan, to their credit, they did what they're supposed to do. They got past both those teams. And look, for the most part, Oklahoma City, this sounds bad. I don't want to, this will come across really bad. Oklahoma City really only took them to the woodsheds in games 1 and game 5, if my memory serves me correctly. I don't think the difference between Oklahoma City and Minnesota is as vast as those results would indicate. But what I do think matters more so is if you get Oklahoma City next year or anybody, I still do believe, yes, I know I'm talking out both sides of my mouth here. You can, like the Wolves did, you can make a run as a 6 seed, a 5 seed, a 7 seed, whatever. But even in the NBA, the numbers will tell you it is better to be the home team. That series against Oklahoma City, I do believe would have went. I'm not saying the Wolves would have won. In fact, they probably would have lost. But the series would have been more of a series and went longer if the Wolves had home court advantage. I do believe that. So long story short, as I'm talking in circles, I don't know where they stack up because I think the Wolves could easily have the best record in the West next year and lose in the conference semifinals. I also think they could finish 5th, be healthy, and wind right back up in the Western Conference Finals or the NBA Finals. The Eastern Conference thing is interesting because I think a lot of Timberwolves fans have been saying that for 20 years. But you know Minnesota luck, Dylan. I know out in North Dakota, but you know Minnesota luck. The moment the Timberwolves wind up in the Eastern Conference is when the power balance of the NBA will shift east instead of west. And it does do that. I mean, it's been a while, but typically the power balance of the NBA shifts. And you just know Minnesota luck. When it shifts over to the Eastern Conference, will be right about the time the Minnesota Timberwolves are realigned into the Eastern Conference. So iron sharpens iron. If you want to look at it that way, it's a good problem to be playing on the better side. In theory, if you get through the West and get to the NBA Finals, well, then you should just be putting in your work to win the Larry O'Brien because you've went through a tougher gauntlet and whoever the East sends is probably not up to competition from what you've seen in the West. So I don't worry a ton about that, but to me it's more about matchups than even record. And I think we saw that with the Timberwolves last year.
Yeah, I think the difference, you talked about the neither were far off from the Wolves weren't too far off from the. I think the biggest difference in that series, looking back on it, is the uh the maturity that the Thunder had over the Wolves. I think that really showed, and I just think those minute details, and that's part of being young is you don't always look at those locked into those things, and I think listening to the players' press conference after the Thunder ended their season in 5 games, talking about like the coaches gave us the answers to the test. We didn't go out and execute. And I think having the presence or like the realization of like, okay, maybe this is something we have to work on in the offseason is we need to lock in on those minor details because those are the differences that are going to make the difference between winning and losing.
Do you know what's crazy about what you just said, though? Because I agree with you. Oklahoma City was more poised and mature. Oklahoma City is younger than the Minnesota Timberwolves. youngest,
Yeah.
youngest, youngest team ever to win an NBA championship, collectively by combined age. But they're well coached, and again, you go back 3-4 years, kind of a laughing stock, but they had a plan. Now there was no guarantees that it was going to work. They still have a crap ton of draft picks. So people worry about, oh, well, first, yeah, eventually the apron's going to catch up with them with how much money they've paid players just this offseason. That's still a few years away. But by the time that starts to become an issue, you can start to move some of those guys if you need to. You also still have a plethora of draft picks. And before people tell me late first round draft picks don't matter, those are the same people that will tell you Jaden McDaniels, you can't trade him. Well, Jaden McDaniels was a late first round draft pick. So don't tell me that they don't matter, but then tell me that McDaniels is untradeable. They do matter. It's just, yes, there's a less success rate that they're going to work. But if you do your scouting, you do your homework, you're going to find good players in the middle. Look, the Minnesota Timberwolves fans are all excited right now about our guy. I'm just going to call him Juan Berenguer, the former Minnesota Twin, because I can't get the poor guy's name right. It'll probably take me a year to get his name right. We're all excited about him. He's 18 and was I'm blanking here, 17th overall pick, 14th overall pick. Oh, we think he's going to be good. He might not be good. So the draft picks thing to me for Oklahoma City does matter because you have more draft picks to play with to acquire players. You also have more draft picks for when you whiff on a player. Guess what? Oh, we whiffed on the player we took at 21, but the guy we took at 25 is really good. So, I mean, they're in a really good spot. And for a while, I was thinking, well, this isn't super sustainable. Maybe they'll probably win one, maybe they'll win two. Having looked at it a bit more, there's no guarantees. This could be it for them. But they are set up for a nice little run here the next 3 to 5 years. But that doesn't mean they're going to do it every year. Yeah, you still have to go out and earn it year after year. And it'll be interesting to see. My hunch is they're going to pass the test. I love that you talked about, because I think it was Nas Reed said that they're giving us the answers, but we're not passing the test. I think it was him. Oklahoma City's test this upcoming year is going to be, can we back that up? Logic would tell me they probably can. It just seems like they have passed every test to now. So why would they not now? Again, where the Timberwolves stack up, I don't know, but I still think they're going to be pretty dang good. But I still think another move's coming. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But I just think something's coming.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they pulled a rabbit out of their hat like a week before training camp last year. I mean, they might do it again. But talking about a team with some good momentum here. Or actually, we'll save the Vikings for last. We'll save the best for last. We'll switch gears over to down to the college ranks. The Gophers. Football season is right around the corner. They quietly had a very nice season last year. They exceeded a lot of expectations. I think a lot of people had them going 4-8, 5-7. Weren't sure what they were going to get out of the quarterback, and I think that was the biggest reason why they had the success that they had. A lot of questions like, why would they go and get this FCS guy out of New Hampshire? And Max Brosmer, I think if he had another year of eligibility, I it's a long shot, but the way the Gophers football season sets up would be, it sets up really nice for them where they could be a dark horse team, and they might be, they beat Wisconsin in the final week of the regular season and they need a team to lose, where they could potentially be they could be this year's Indiana, where sneak into the playoffs or take care of business, kind of just keep stacking the wins. And I do think though too that I think they are pretty high on, is it Drake Lindsay? Is that the
Yeah.
quarterback?
Yeah. And I
And
think, yeah, finish your thought. I'm sorry.
And I it was interesting to see because I think I saw an article that he was talking about what Brosmer did for him, just learning and having that learning curve to what it takes to be a Division I quarterback. And I actually got to sit in. I coach high school football, and we went to a clinic up in the cities this year. And his Lindsay's high school coach came and did a presentation on red zone offense and creating efficiency in the red zone. And it was really interesting to listen to. So after listening to that, I have some high hopes that this Lindsay guy is going to be a good quarterback this year for the Gophers.
I think everything you said at the beginning about the Gophers win projections being around 4 or 5 wins prior to last year and people not really knowing if Max Brosmer was going to be any good. I watched him for 2 games against North Carolina and Rhode Island, and at about halftime of the Rhode Island game pronounced, I'm not sure he's very good, but he figured it out. And I think a lot of that too was just, game plan coaching, how they were handling games. I think with Drake Lindsay, it's the same. I think that's also the beauty of college football right now, Dylan. You could tell me we waved the magic wand. It's CFP day and bowl selection Sunday, and you could tell me the Gophers had this really nice year and went 8-4, 9-3, and I would say, yeah, I can see that. You can also tell me that they went 4-8, and I could say, yeah, I can see that. A lot of it is going to depend on the play of Drake Lindsay, and not only the play, it's probably keeping him healthy. Because if he's not healthy, there's nothing behind him. I mean, they're fairly thin at quarterback at this point, at least as far as experience. I mean, even Drake Lindsay got in a few games last year. He still technically did not burn his red shirt. He got a few plays in mop up time. The defense should be okay, but you never know. It's a new defensive coordinator again. I think that's the third defensive coordinator in 3 years. That's another issue, not necessarily unique to Minnesota, but it still stinks to have to deal with that. Um, I, my gut says they win 7 games. I think the schedule is mildly tricky. I don't think going to Cal for your third game of the year is a treat. To me, that feels like a loss, but you should beat Buffalo. You better beat Northwestern State. The Big Ten schedule has tricky games, but there's games that you can win. The home schedule isn't horribly daunting. I think going to Oregon, pack a lunch, that's probably, well, I'll just say it's a loss. That's a loss. I believe Ohio State's on the schedule, right? That's a loss. At Kinnick, probably a loss. So there's 3 right there. And I just said it might be Cal. So I have a hard time believing they could win more than 8 games. I think it's somewhere in that 6 to 7 range, which I don't think is all that bad. I mean, it's a redshirt freshman that you're asking to go out there and win you games in the Big Ten. How you see this all the time. You watch a lot of college football. Unless it's the Alabamas, the Floridas, the Ohio States, and the Michigans of the world, how many freshmen or redshirt freshman kids show up and will their team to 9 or 10 victories? It just does not happen. I'm not saying it never happens, but the percentage, it doesn't happen a lot. So if this team is able to, and I know there's 87 bowl games now, and that's eventually going to be trimmed down because we're only going to have a playoff at some point. But for now, there's still umpteen bowl games. My gut tells me the Gophers will be bowl eligible and they'll win 6 or 7 games. And PJ Fleck will probably win another one because he never loses bowl games unless he's coaching at Western Michigan, which you could say, does that really mean anything? I don't know if it does, but I can tell you once the ball's kicked off, even as a fan, even though 20 of your players aren't playing in the game, you'd rather win it than lose it. So I guess it does mean something to win it. So I'm excited for college football. I'm excited for the Gophers season, but I don't see them as a 10, 11, 12 win team. But again, who knows? Nobody saw Indiana as a playoff team last year, and good for Kirk Cinetti and the Hoosiers.
Well, Kurt Signetti is a story for a different podcast. I'm not bought in on the guy. You go back to listen to some of the shows that we've had. I've had some hot takes, and I've had people that were like, "What? How?" And then by the end of the year, after they played Notre Dame or leading up to the Notre Dame game, they were like, "Yeah, Dylan, you were right. I'm not sure about this guy," but the
But to your point, though, Dylan, that's where you are right. Even with the expanded playoff, which is now 12 teams, it'll eventually go to 16. Before we know it, it'll be 24 or even 32, and there'll be no bowl games. They'll just do like 2 brackets of 16. That day's coming, probably within the next 10 years. But even the beauty of the college football playoff is, can Indiana win the national championship? I don't believe so. Can Minnesota win the national championship? I don't believe so. Can you now make the college football playoff? I believe you can. And go back to 2019. If this was the current playoff system in 2019, the Gopher football team would have been knocking on that door to be in the college football playoff. So teams like Minnesota, Indiana, Central Florida, all those teams that are just kind of on the fringe, or you're in a power conference, but you're not the power team, you should welcome this because it is good for you. But there's still only so many spots. You got 130 plus teams that play. Only 12 teams right now are really playing for something that matters at the end of the year.
Yeah. Because the other part too with like this year, this feels like it could be like one of the most wide open college football seasons, just because there's really no like true like dominant quarterback, because I think there's a lot of talented quarterbacks, but there's so many that just don't have the experience. There's so many unknowns, whether they transferred or they're young, that true freshman or redshirt freshman. Arch Manning is supposed to be probably one of the odds-on favorite to win the Heisman, but he hasn't seen a lot of live reps, so we're not sure what he's going to look like. And if he plays bad in week 1, it's going to be out there like, oh, overrated. Oh, I don't understand the hype about this guy.
Yeah.
How did he do blah, 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 blah? And until these games kick off. So I think, you almost see the shift from that you see in the NFL, that shifts kind of towards colleges is more so now, where, if you're getting the better quarterback play, in these matchups, it's usually take the team that has the better quarterback, because it feels like they're going to find some way to make some throw that only a professional quarterback's going to be able to make. And I'm not saying Drake Lindsay can be that guy, but I mean, we don't know. I mean, I think last year was one of Fleck's best coaching jobs, because at halftime of the Michigan game, everybody wanted him fired and gone. And Tim Walz was at the game, and they were saying he should come down and coach.
I think what you said too about fan pressure and fan expectations, I definitely think even in the last, it's always been there in big time college athletics. I think it's been there more now the last handful of years, just with NIL and transfer portal. But to me, that also underscores why I think on some of these teams, I get it. You can miss out on your opportunity to make it to the college football playoff by having a bad September. However, you can still have a really nice season if you have a bad September and work through it. Because the one thing you have to remember, even the Gopher football team this year, you're talking about, I think they brought in 13 transfers. I'm not saying they're all going to play, but you're talking about a good portion of your roster now every year was not on campus last year. That takes time. And in the college game, you get 15 spring practices. Now you're going to go play a game that means something. That takes time. So we saw it last year. A lot of teams that you saw in October and November looked a lot better than they did in September. And the reason is exactly the two things that you kind of alluded to. Well, the big thing is the quarterback play. You're right. When you're trying to decide pick 'em, or even if you're one of those degenerates that likes to bet on games, generally look at especially if it's two evenly matched teams, look at who has the better quarterback. Yeah. Look at who has the better quarterback. But then another thing to look at too, especially early in the season, does this team have a roster that was largely intact from last year? Or is this one of those teams that has 10 of their 22 total starters were playing on other rosters last year? Some teams do it better than others. We've seen it early on in this new era. Other teams, it's taken longer. And I echo what you say. I love to rip on PJ Fleck because it's easy, but I do it more because it's funny. And I'll be honest about that. I think the guy takes way too much crap from the real Gopher dieheads or diehards or even the older generation. Again, he wins bowl games. I saw he got his fake extension, and you go look at the comments, and again, a lot of the comments are negative. One of the comments, I don't remember the guy's name, but it wasn't just unique to him. Oh, we'll get used to more losing. Well, nothing about that comment is factually correct. It's just not. He wins almost every non-conference game. He has plenty of Big Ten wins. Again, he doesn't have a winning record in the Big Ten, but he's been pretty darn good. I get it. He doesn't beat the upper echelon teams, but name me any other team in the Big Ten that is not one of the upper echelon teams that historically beats the upper echelon teams more than not. I'm not saying he's the greatest football coach of all time. I am saying at this point, outside of Murray Warmath, who won national championships, he's probably the best coach the University of Minnesota has ever had. Do I believe his time is running out here? Yeah, I do. Every offseason, I assume he's going to take another job somewhere just because it's logical. He's now been here about 10 years. At sometimes you just need to move just to freshen things up a bit. I get that, but I'm also not running him out of town, and I won't run him out of town this year if they go 3-9. Now, if they go 3-9 this year and they follow it up with a 2-4 start the following year, okay, he's probably in trouble, but I need to see what this looks like with Drake Lindsay before I really formulate any opinions. But I think by and large, the guy's done a really good job here. And you even see it in the crowd, Dylan. I know some games are a bit, you show up, it's an 11 a.m. game, there's 31,000 people there. But I can tell you, even those crowds, it's a different crowd now than it was 10 years ago. And I'm not trying to put anybody down. But until PJ Fleck got here, that crowd was largely 55, 60 plus. Yeah. And they all came from the rich suburbs of Minneapolis and St. Paul. It is now a more younger, fun, vibrant crowd when they show up. And that to me is a reflection of the product on the field and the head coach. So yes, do I make fun of him? Absolutely. Will I continue to make fun of him when he says stuff that I think is stupid, like, oh, you just lost to Wisconsin, and then 2 minutes after you lost a chance to go to the Big Ten championship game, you're talking about being co-Big Ten West champions? Absolutely, I'm going to rip you for that because that's
low-hanging fruit right there, Ross.
Yeah, because that's a laughable statement, and he should know that. But I also understand it's in his DNA to be that way. But by and large, I will tell you, I don't. He has left meat on the bone. I get that. I'm the first one to say that. A couple of years when
there's a lot of coaches who have.
Yeah. Exactly. And again, that's not unique to him. Do you know coaches that leave meat on the bone? Generally, they're coaching programs like Minnesota where they don't quite have the talent that some of these other schools have. And that's not going to change. People all thought that would change with NIL. It's not, because all that changed, Dylan, especially now, even when you can pay players, the programs that were cheating, now they can just do it legally, and they can do it more, and they can do it more effectively. Nothing about NIL, transfer portal, and even now having a salary cap to pay players for $22 million, that is not going to level the playing field. It's going to help. It'll help incrementally with a player here and there. But I got a sneaky suspicion it's still going to be the Alabamas, the Floridas, the Texases, the Ohio States, the Michigans. It's still going to be the same schools that have run college football for the last 50 years. And do you know how I know that? They've done it the last 5 years in this new system. It's not going to radically change this year.
No, that I guess and the other big thing with Fleck is that he has beaten Wisconsin, something Jerry never did. Tim Brewster certainly never did. I don't think Tim Brewster won anything because he definitely didn't beat his neighbors to the west ever. And he Glenn Mason, was it Glenn Mason? Yeah, Glenn Taylor's was the old owner
Glenn
of the
Mason.
Wolves.
Yeah,
but
yep.
Glenn Mason also, I probably lost 4 of his last 5 to the Badgers. Yeah,
well, the Gophers had lost 13, 14 games in a row. Sound like the common man here. I think it was 14, but it might have been 13 to Wisconsin. Literally kids were born and entering high school in the time it took Minnesota football to beat Wisconsin. Again, I'm doing this off the top of my head. Maybe you have it in front of you, or I can look it up on my phone. I think this is year 9 for PJ, so he should be 4-4 against Wisconsin. On the flip side, he is
20, because his
2017,
first
right?
year was 2017. So
She's at 8 seasons. Yeah, so he's four.
yeah,
He's
this
four.
is gonna
Yep.
this will be his 9th season.
Yeah, he's 4-4 against Wisconsin, and again, that to me will always matter. Whether it's a 6-win Gopher team or a 9 or 10-win Gopher team, it matters to beat Wisconsin. People will rip him for not beating Iowa, but again, some of those are the same people that said, "Oh, just beat Wisconsin and all will be forgiven." Well, you know what? The last 5-6 years, he has beat Wisconsin. Yeah, is Wisconsin down? Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, they are. I think they would tell you their program's been down. Doesn't matter. You're still beating them. And that's the most important game, I think, to most Gopher football fans. It is to me. This is blasphemy to some people. I'll whisper this. I don't hate Iowa. I'd prefer to beat them and not go 1-7 against them, but I don't hate them. I really don't. I've been to Kinnick multiple times now. I've had great experiences at Kinnick. I don't hate Iowa. I don't. I actually hate Iowa State more because they wear black uniforms. They have black is not in their yeah,
Oh
black. Yeah,
yes, Ross.
yeah.
That is a we did our airing of grievances back back during Christmas, and that was one of them of teams that wear
Oh,
jerseys that aren't in their color scheme, and that's a story for a whole other podcast. We
and
actually,
very
when we all
quickly
get
though,
together again, that's going to
very
be our next episode is
okay.
airing sports grievances again.
Okay, and very quickly, you can't call me a hypocrite. When the Gophers wear black and gunmetal gray, I rip them too. It's it's one thing if you do it once a year. If you're Iowa State and you're doing it like 7, 8 times a year, and
Yeah,
now they'll tell you, "Oh, black isn't our color scheme." Okay, it is, but for 100 years, all you had was black little trim. And
yeah.
now you wear these all stupid black uniforms. Don't stop it. So I hate Iowa State more than Iowa, and I don't care what anybody says. But no,
I was in I was at TCF when the Gophers wore that steel metal gray.
did they win?
Back in No, the Gophers, no, they
Yeah.
did not.
Okay.
That was 2015. That was when they played Michigan. That was Harbaugh's first year. They tried
Okay.
the Leitner sneak on the goal
Oh,
line.
yeah, yeah. And they lost track of time. Yeah, let's
Yeah.
not talk about that. In my mind,
That was
in my mind, in an alternate universe, the Gophers won that game.
that one because they called it a touchdown originally, and I had a bunch of Gopher fans laughing at me, and then they showed up on the replay, and I'm like sitting there, I'm like, well, they didn't score. I wasn't feeling great about it because they're at the
Yeah.
1-yard line, and I'm like, and then I still remember the students like creeping down, getting ready to storm the field, and then they try the sneak, he gets stuffed,
Yeah.
and I go and I'm the only one in a crowd of Gopher fans jumping around, going nuts, and they're all staring at me, flipping me off, and
Yeah,
it was
to me, it's not even the failed quarterback sneak. It's that you completely lost situational awareness of the time and the clock
oh
to even have a chance to run another play. It's like, what are you guys doing? Get going.
I remember looking up, and I'm like, because I kind of forgot that he was technically in bounds, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh wait, that's right, the clock's gonna start running, and we look up, and it's like there's like 3 seconds left, and it's like, and everyone was like, well, no, he was still in bounds, his knee was down. It's like, oh, yeah, and then they run the QB sneak and don't get in, but the that yeah,
I, I,
that
I
was
refuse.
funny that you brought up those steel gray uniforms.
I
They
refuse
didn't
to.
have their last names; they just had Minnesota on the back.
You know what though? The name on the front is a heck of a lot more important than the name on the back. In this case, it was the name on the back, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's the old Herb Brooks line. Yeah, it's funny though
Yeah.
because in the list of like Gopher football heartbreak, that game ranks so low. I don't even get worked up about it. There are just like it's bad. Don't get me wrong, but there's the 35-7 game that they blew at home to Michigan in 2003. There's
I remember that game.
There's Justin Kusek, the punter, dropping a ball, literally dropping a snap that the Badgers recover in the end zone to win a game and keep the axe. There's Northwestern winning on a Hail Mary in the early 2000s. There's then after 2003 going to Michigan in 2004, having them beat and still losing almost every game against Wisconsin. There's the Iowa game in 2019, where if you win that, you are still technically alive for the college football playoff when it was only 4 teams and you lost that game. There's the Texas Tech game where at the time it was the biggest blown bowl victory in bowl history. So I can go for days about Gopher football heartbreak. That Michigan one doesn't even faze me. If anything, it's more comical than anything. So
Yeah, see,
bottom line, we'll see, Dylan. I think they'll probably win 6 or 7 games. If you had to hold me to a number, I think it'll be a 7-5 football team, and they'll wind back up in like the Pinstripe Bowl, which is incredibly fine with me because I actually think of all the third tier bowl games. That one's pretty dang cool.
yeah. So does PJ Fleck win that bowl game?
At some point he's going to lose. Like, I mean, he just is. It's law of averages. At some point he's going to lose. My hunch would be it'll be perfect Minnesota that PJ Fleck will not lose a bowl game. And this is going to be semantics here. PJ Fleck will not lose a bowl game at Minnesota until he is hosting a college football playoff game, and Minnesota will be the first home team to lose a college football playoff game because that is so Minnesota. That's
Yeah.
that's what'll happen. Yeah, I don't know. Some of that is it's so hard. I do this bowl pick'em thing that I've done with friends for years, and it is so much harder by the year because you have to we turn in our pick sheets. And yes, we're old school. We're actually doing it on Excel spreadsheet. It's like 15 of us.
Oh, wow.
We turn these bad boys in before the first bowl game. You have no idea who the bleep is playing in these games. Or kids say,
especially now.
Yeah, kids say they're playing and then they're not. We even had players leave a couple players left Penn State and they were in the playoff. So you have no clue, and more so than ever. Yes, again, when the ball's kicked off, you do want to win the game, but they're exhibitions more so than ever. They just are. They're a jump start on the next year. If you win them, great. If you lose them, well, at least I got to watch my team for another 3.5 hours. Because at the end of the day, to me, unless you're in the college football playoff game, Dylan, the last game against Wisconsin matters more than any bowl game you're going to play in.
I had kind of had this experience this year in college football, Rod. I don't know if you knew, but Michigan was 21-point underdogs against Ohio State going into the horseshoe. It was a day of reckoning, and I had zero expectation. Like I didn't think Michigan was going to win. I thought maybe they'd compete for a half, and I'd be like, well, they competed for a half. You know what? Wasn't their year. We got Bryce Underwood coming. And then at halftime of the game when it was 10-10, and then things just started getting weird. Ohio State was missing kicks. Will Howard was turning the ball over in the red zone. I'm like, I was fully back on board. Davis Warren, who couldn't complete a pass all year, a forward pass all year, is pulling rabbits out of his hat. And then he throws a terrible interception at the goal line where I've started doing this of like tight games where I will record my reactions. Like I'll just I have two phones. I have my personal, I have my work phone. I'll start recording off my work phone. And there is a good video of me watching Davis Warren throw that interception and me just going like full limp down. Like it sounded like my voice cracked, sounded like I was about to cry. Like, and then they ended up winning.
Here's the beauty.
And I can hold that over Ohio State's heads because they have the Woody Hayes quote of you can't claim a national title unless you beat that team up north. And seeing Ohio State fans completely like flip after beating Michigan their entire personality for the last 20 years to saying the game doesn't matter at all now it's just so juicy for me.
Well, and here's the beauty of college football. At the end of the day, it's not nearly on the same level, but years ago, actually, to bring this full circle before we maybe talk some Vikings, Tim Brewster did not win a rivalry trophy, and the Gophers play for 4. But the year he was fired, his replacement, Jeff Horton, beat Iowa at home, a game that I was at. And that Gopher team had 2 wins, and Iowa had 7. So again, not huge, but Iowa was much better. Minnesota won that game. They had no business winning that game, but they won it. It was fun. I'm glad that I was there. Also kind of hilarious that Tim Brewster didn't win a trophy game in 3.5 years, and Jeff Horton won a trophy game, I think, in his second opportunity. He may have gotten run. Oh, no, I think he either lost to Wisconsin or got run by your squad or something like that, but that doesn't matter. But what matters is where I'm going with this and what you saw. At the end of the day in college football, you're still trusting 18 to 23-year-old kids. Weird bleep is going to happen all the time. Yeah. And that's what makes the sport great. You truly never know. About the only thing you know is when Michigan or Alabama takes on something called Incarnate Word, they're probably going to win by 70 points. But okay, I said it at this beginning. Minnesota's not going to beat Oregon. Minnesota's not going to beat Ohio State. But you know what? Would anybody be surprised if they did? I think you would be surprised, but it's not like it hasn't happened before. There is an upset like that almost every week in college football, and that's what makes the sport great.
Yeah, that they could be the Vanderbilt over Alabama.
Yes,
I
yes.
and Fleck has been knocking at the door a couple of times where they've had opportunities. They just haven't quite been able to get over the hump. And at some point, like you talk about the law of averages, one of these times he's gonna break through and get that big win. You know, a lot of people didn't think he was gonna beat Penn State in 19. They led wire to wire. Probably one of the you talked about some of the forgettable Gopher games. That's going to be one that you will remember forever, was beating
Absolutely.
Penn State that year.
Absolutely. And I think we can end it here because I'm sure not as many people care about Gopher football as I do, but I can talk about for days and will talk about for days. What I loved about that day, and honestly, I will, if that's the height of the PJ Fleck era in Gopher football for the next 20, 30 years, then so be it. But I think, Dylan, you probably remember this even where you are at. The University of Minnesota, downtown Minneapolis, on that November day in Minneapolis was the epicenter of the college football world. College game day.
Yes, it was.
College game day was not there. They came about 3 weeks later for Minnesota, Wisconsin, which was awesome. Also, something I never thought I would see. College game day at the University of Minnesota. Come on. Again, PJ Fleck.
I don't mean to brag, but I've seen it twice at my alma mater.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and then Minnesota got it a second time during the COVID season against your squad.
That's right.
So again,
they did. That's right.
Again. So they're 0-2. So game day never needs to come back. But again, think about that. PJ Fleck has helped bring college game day to Minnesota twice, the University of Minnesota. But that day, Dylan, that crowd was 98% maroon and gold. You could hand count the Penn State fans that got tickets in there. So again, don't tell me that Minnesota can't be a college football town. Minnesota is always going to be a Vikings town. Always will be. They can go 3-14 or 14-3. This is a Vikings town. But Team 1B is always dependent on who's winning and who's in the mix. And if that's Gopher football, people will show up. It is a legacy program and people do care about it. They're not going to show up if you're 3-9. Now, if you're 9-3, especially under PJ Fleck, the evidence has shown if you put a good product on the field and you're playing meaningful games, people will show up. But yeah, that Penn State day was awesome. And I'm jealous of people like you that get to experience that like 3 times a year. And that might be the only time I experienced that in my life. but it was great. I loved it. Loved every second of it.
Yeah. Well, you talked about this being Minneapolis being a Vikings town. It's a Viking state. And, we'll save the best for last. We'll scratch the 3M Open. 3M Open, I went there once. It was a lot of fun.
Should I go?
I would love to go back one of these years.
Should I go?
So
I've never went. Should I go?
You should. It's a lot of fun. Okay. The bad part with it timing wise is it's right after the Open. So you don't get the full lineup of like the really good golfers, but still watching guys hit it 350 yards off the tee and then sink 15-foot putts. When we went, we followed around Sergio Garcia and Bubba Watson. And I enjoy. I would love to go back. I'd love to go back to another PGA event. I haven't heard back if I'm going to be going to the Masters this year. I don't think they've drawn that yet, or if they have, I haven't. Either I deleted the email or I'm just not going. It's probably the latter. But no, it is a lot of fun. Just to go watch and see those guys hit it the way they do.
Even the worst guy at the 3M Open is going to beat me by 30 strokes. So, I mean, you'll still be an impressive golfer to me. And by the way, they always say the field's not going to be that great. And you know what? A few times it hasn't. But you can still look at that list. And if you're like me, I don't go out of my way to watch golf, but I still watch plenty of golf, if that makes any sense. Typically, I almost always end up watching like the last 9 holes of a tournament on Sunday. And if I'm around on Saturday, I'll throw it on in the background if I can. if I know a lot of the names at the 3M Open, the field's not as bad as people make it out to be. You're just not getting, it's not the top 10 in the FedEx standings that are there, but there's still really good golfers there that have won, sometimes have won majors, and oftentimes have won a lot of PGA events. So I'm going to go at some point. I just, it's weird. I'm really protective of my Saturdays and Sundays, and I know that that's a fun thing, but that feels like work to go do that on a Saturday or Sunday. I would rather take a Thursday or Friday off and go see it with the entire field and just walk around and kind of see it. So maybe I'll do that. If not this year, I'll do it in the future. But yeah,
Yeah.
let's talk some purple. Let's talk some Vikings here.
Let's talk some Vikings. They're coming off a really good season. A lot of people had the Vikings projected to take last in the NFC North. Sam Darnold had a tremendous year. Disappointing end, the way he ended with the Lions and the Rams. But there is a lot of excitement. Well, from my end, there's a lot of trepidation about JJ McCarthy missing last year, and I get the criticisms. He has done, he hasn't had that, the calling him a handoff, and I get, but that's the style that they played. But if you go back and you look at when Michigan has looked at him to go and make plays, he has delivered almost every single time. And the lie, or like some of the stuff that, like, if you listen to what Cowherd says of he doesn't have elite arm strength, I have about 5 or 6 throws that I can think of off the top of my head that shows that. And that's also probably one of his weaknesses, is that he just has a fastball. He hasn't, I think, fully developed that, been able to take some off and develop that touch pass consistently, or things like that. Or I've watched him throw a 5-foot dump off to the running back about 90 miles an hour that he just couldn't handle. I think that's things like that he had to learn. But as far as playing in a pro system, he understands it, and the guy is a tremendous leader. I mean, Michigan does not have the success. I mean, he was the spearhead of that 21 recruiting class that really turned the program around, because without him, Jim Harbaugh is not going to be wasn't coaching at Michigan. Really saved his job. And I think the roster around him, it's very similar to what he had at Michigan. I mean, they invested heavily on the offensive line. They've got 2 really good backs. Brian Flores in that defense is tremendous. And he's also going to have what Ohio State had when he was at Michigan, is those 2 elite receivers, something that he didn't have at Michigan. He had some good ones, but they weren't the game breakers that Marvin Harrison Jr., Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, all those guys were. He's going to have that, and he's going to have a good tight end in TJ Hawkinson.
When it comes to JJ McCarthy, I can offer up 2 things on him, or I can only evaluate him on 2 things. Watching him last year, 2 years ago at Huntington Bank Stadium against the Gophers. So that's the only time I've seen him in person. And I can go off of what other people that I work with or that I'm around can tell me about him. Case in point, each week for Purple Daily, behind the scenes, I'm helping with Purple Access. Judd Zolgad, Chip Scoggins, they've seen as much as you can of JJ McCarthy in a Vikings uniform. The general consensus is the arm strength stuff, to steal an old term, is poppycock. He's got arm. I think most people know that he can whip it 60 yards, no problem, 70 yards, no problem. The criticisms that I have heard, not just from those 2, but others, is it may be the out route, that he's liable to have, maybe out routes he could get away with at Michigan and playing college football. If he makes those same passes that he's thrown in training camp or at Michigan, they're going to go for 6 the other way. Now, a part of me thinks, okay, that's going to happen a couple times. He'll correct that and it won't happen again. But I think that's the one thing to be aware of. I agree with you. I look at the kid, and sometimes, to me, I think there's a difference between cockiness and swagger. I think cockiness, for the most part, is a jerk, and it's manufactured. He's got swagger that people just gravitate towards. I go back. Here's a comparison that I'll make, and we'll see where it goes. I think Kirk Cousins is a quarterback who is, I don't know, an 8. But there's good evidence that players don't necessarily love him. There have been players that have flat out come out that have played with him that don't love him. Now, a lot of those were at Washington. Players at Minnesota said a lot of different things. I think Kirk Cousins an 8 that gets the team around him to play at like a 6.5 or a 7. You go way back, I think Teddy Bridgewater was probably a 6. Those players would play at a 10 level for him. And I think JJ McCarthy's kind of one of those players too, where he's just a kid that walks in the room and I think everybody looks at him and says, oh, wow, their heads turn. Oh, okay, JJ's here. Now, again, that's just what I see. He has to earn it on the field and prove it to his teammates. You got to be the first in the locker room, the last one to leave. Eventually, you got to win games. But for everything that you said, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think with JJ, they're in a nice position where they can tell him, especially in September, you're going to walk before you run. You can, being a game manager is not a bad thing. They may only ask him to pass 20, 25 times a game. Heck, maybe 15 to 20 times a game, September into October. But with the goal of getting him when they need him to try and win them a game in November and December, hopefully ramp him up to that part or to that point. I look at the Vikings this year, Dylan, with the schedule and JJ McCarthy. I just think it's unrealistic to ask him or expect that the Vikings are going to win 14 games like they did last year. I think that's unrealistic. I think the number to me is about 10. If the Vikings go 10-7 and make the playoffs and maybe win a playoff game, that's good. Now, if they do the Jaden Daniels, win a bunch of games and wind up in the NFC Championship game or further, great. Let's do that. I'm not saying that that can't happen, but I don't think that should be the expectation. I know he's technically not a rookie anymore, but he's a rookie when it comes to playing. He had very little experience last year before he lost 20 pounds and looked like a 13-year-old kid on the sidelines wearing an oversized hat. I think we need to be very careful about just automatically assuming the Vikings are going to go 13-4 this year, get the number 1 seed, and JJ McCarthy is going to take them to a Super Bowl. Oddly, I feel like he might be the quarterback to do it. I don't think it's going to be this year. That's all that I'm saying. I don't think that should be the expectation. I would like for Kevin O'Connell to win a playoff game. If not, he's starting to become another Dennis Green. Gets to the playoffs and never wins. And nobody wants that. So I'd like to get that monkey off the back of the Minnesota Vikings this year, whether it's in the wild card round, maybe you win a couple playoff games, whether you're a road team or a home team. All I want out of the year, whether you win 9 regular season games or 12 regular season games, let's find a way to win a playoff game and let's build from there.
Yeah, well, and that's the other part of it too. Is in his back pocket, JJ's back pocket is one of the best quarterback coaches in all of the NFL. Because I mean, you look at what he did with Josh Dobbs, you look at what he did with Nick Mullins, you look at like what he did with Sam Darnold. I mean, he had Sam Darnold in the MVP conversation. I think that's something that I don't think it's discussed enough of how good of a quarterback coach he is, to where he's gonna get JJ right, and he's gonna call the game to protect him of what JJ's weaknesses are, especially in early on in the year as JJ gets caught up to speed as to what NFL speed is. And, like you said, winning 13, 14 games, probably not realistic. Also because I think the division is going to be an absolute gauntlet where these teams could potentially just beat each other up, where winning 10 or 11 games might be enough to get you to win. Because I think the Bears, there's still a lot of question marks, but I think they're going to be better. I think the Packers are going to be consistent, but I think at some point their luck is going to have to run out. And I still have questions about Jordan Love. I mean, he's shown a lot of moments where he's been good, but for every good moment, I can sit there and think of 2 or 3 bad ones. And the Lions, bring with the 2 new coordinators, are they going to be able to stay healthy, or, what's there? It's still the Lions. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I agree with you on the division. Sorry to cut you off there, but I do think you're right. I think that the division in theory should be tough. Somebody is probably not going to be as good as we think they are. Maybe that's just because they don't reach their potential, or heaven forbid a quarterback gets injured. And typically if a quarterback gets injured, for the most part, your season gets derailed. And again, the Vikings too, also playing, not that it matters a ton, but you're playing each team that finished in second place in the NFC. So you're not playing the last place teams from the other NFC divisions. You're playing teams that were close to winning their division. So that's another thing. I'm just happy for the first time, I think, in 28 seasons, not to have to go play Seattle at CenturyLink Field. Because for some reason it's written into the schedule that the Vikings always have to play at Seattle, and it never makes any sense to me. I'm just happy that
I
I'm almost positive that's not on the schedule this year for I think the first time since I've legally been able to drink, which is now 20 years.
I went to one of those games in Seattle. It was 2018. It was the Kirk Cousins first year on Monday night, and it was terrible. It was the Vikings. They couldn't do anything. They had one touchdown. It was in garbage time. I think they had a. I remember Cousins hit Diggs on a deep shot, and they tried running it, and that was the John D. Filippo days,
Oh,
and there
Flippy.
was
Yeah,
just
Flippy.
yeah, and it was like, oh yep, it's a run to the right. Oh, it's a run to the left. Oh, yep,
It's a
there's
deep
8
pass.
guys over there. It's not going to work.
Yeah, it was run on first, run on second, pass. Yeah. Yeah,
And I
it'll
think that was I think after that Seattle game, I think that was when DiFilippo got cut or got fired. Is I don't know if they let him back on the plane to Minneapolis, but I do think I remember waking up that morning and seeing that the Vikings have parted ways with John DiFilippo.
I'm going to put something on you here because you're the big JJ McCarthy guy. You're a bigger Michigan guy than I have. Obviously, I did watch him a lot, but I've only seen him in person the one game from the 200 level at Huntington Bank Stadium. If JJ McCarthy doesn't work out, let's say 3 years from now, he's not the Viking starting quarterback and he's destined to be a career backup. Maybe he starts again 5 years down the road. If JJ McCarthy doesn't work out, what went wrong?
I I think that's the hard part for me is because I keep coming back to like the talent is all there. I mean, he was one of the top recruits in his high school class, and I know that doesn't really matter a whole lot. I think it would have to be his attitude isn't the way of what we think it is. I unless he's like one of the very arrogant, I don't have to work, but there's nothing that suggests that. Like I think if
Yeah.
he doesn't, I think he's someone that's going to put in the work. And I've watched him in post game interviews. I've watched him on different podcasts of where he'll go in detail and talk about the film study of what he saw on this play and why he did what he did is because I go back to the 2023 game against Ohio State, the touchdown he had to Roman Wilson that um on a third down, and he talked about the linebacker. It was like that was a film study is because that linebacker turns his head, he never turns it back. So I knew if I got it over his head, I knew I was going to have Roman Wilson for a touchdown. So I think if that, but I think he does have where I think that's where it is if he's not the person that he portrays himself to be, because I think guys are going to see through that, or he's just completely changed if he finally runs into money. But I think he's come from a pretty good family. Because he went to a Christian school in Chicago because his senior year was in 2020 during COVID. The whole family moved down to Florida. Um, he's done pretty well in the NIL. I don't think he is somebody that portrays that, but that's really the only thing I could think of coming back to because he has everything in his corner as far as system, personnel, and he's going to be somebody that puts in the work. So, and I think Kevin O'Connell's going to be able to develop some of his weaknesses.
Yeah, and I do think to your point, I think what can't be underscored is now he's going to be suspended for a few games, but to have Jordan Addison to throw to and Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson, assuming that he's healthy, one would guess the offensive line has been fortified, but until you see it, I guess we don't really know, but logic would tell you it probably is because if your tackles stay healthy, you got two of the best tackles in the game. They spent all the money on the guards and the center. And then, oh, by the way, your running backs are still pretty good. Aaron Jones still has a little bit left in the tank. And Mason should really help them. I think obviously they saw something to be able to go get him. And by the way, defensively, they're pretty dang good too. So again, that goes back to I don't think they're gonna have to ask him to win many games 37 to 34.
Just don't lose them. That's the
Yeah,
big thing.
correct. And that goes back to kind of what you said in college. Sometimes it's not even quarterbacks winning the game, it's that they didn't throw the crucial interception or two to lose you the game. And yes, even when you're a game manager, you're going to have to make throws. And I guess I'll end with this. If the Vikings go 11, let's go with 11-6, and people call JJ McCarthy a game manager doesn't have to always be negative. It especially
No.
with where JJ McCarthy's at in his career. If the Vikings go 11-6 and at the end of the year people say, "Well, he's just a game manager." Yeah, in his first year starting. Let's see what he does a couple years down the road. So that's kind of always been my big thing. Sometimes there are quarterbacks who are just game managers. Alex Smith was probably one of those guys, but still pretty dang good. But then you have guys where sometimes game management literally means you're just managing the playbook that you have, which, by the way, to your point, is what he was doing at Michigan. But by the way, when he had to make throws and when he had to will his team to victory, he did it. And I think that that's a good sign. And I do think that that's why Vikings fans are excited. I'm happy JJ McCarthy's here. I wanted Jaden Daniels. I didn't think it was going to happen. Jaden Daniels is a freak. I mean, I'd be shocked if he doesn't win a Super Bowl at some point with my commies. Yes, I'm going to call them the commies because I hate the Commander's name. But again, who knows?
You might not have to call him that for
yeah.
very longer, though.
Yeah, I see. We're already thinking about changing the name, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, good
They
for
brought
them.
the old uniforms back.
By the way, okay, why didn't they just stay football team? That was great. The uniforms were great. The name was great. Just embrace it. They should have just embraced it. But bottom line on the Vikings, I think they're going to be fine. I think they'll make the playoffs. I just don't expect them to be playing in the NFC Championship game and winning 14 games. Now, if they do, I'll be as ecstatic as any other Vikings fan. I'm not saying it can't happen. I just, again, want to reiterate, I don't think that should be the expectation. And oh, by the way, a couple things, couple quick hitters. I'll say in closing about 5 times before we actually close. I think you know that by now. First off, on the Sam Darnold thing, Kevin O'Connell wanted him. Like that, to your point, that's where I think you should trust Kevin O'Connell with the quarterback that they end up selecting, which was JJ McCarthy. I don't think, all things being equal, if he could take any quarterback, he would take Sam Darnold over 15 other guys. I'm not saying that. But with what was available to them after Kirk Cousins left, and then a couple other quarterbacks went off the board and people were panicking, and they wind up with Sam Darnold, and another media member in town says, "Oh, Minnesota Vikings fans, you wanted Kirk Cousins gone, and guess what? You got Sam Darnold." Well, guess what? They won 14 games. So trust Kevin O'Connell, trust the process, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work. This is what happens in the NFL. Guess what? If JJ McCarthy doesn't work out and it bombs, guess what you get to do, Dylan? In 3 years, you get to draft another quarterback in the top 10 and try again. There's no real downside here other than, okay, that sucked. We wasted a few years. And yes, you could be like the Bears and draft a quarterback every 3-4 years and it never works out. Again, law of averages tells you that's probably not going to be the case. There was something else I was going to say, but I've rambled and I've bloviated. So that's it. But it's just trust the process. I believe that this thing is going to work. And that's genuinely why I wanted to ask you, if it doesn't work, why it wouldn't. Because if you can get that out of Sam Darnold, who I've always thought was talented and everybody in the league would tell you that he is, but we hadn't seen that at all in the NFL. If Kevin O'Connell can get that out of Sam Darnold, he's got to be able to at least get the base level talent out of JJ McCarthy, right? I mean, he has to. And if he gets that, well, okay, maybe you don't have a superstar, but you should at least have a guy who's going to have you in the playoffs year in and year out.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're consistently making the playoffs, going back to kind of been a theme of the show, law of averages, at some point you're going to break through. Like at some point you're going to win a playoff game. If you keep winning and losing one, at some point you're going to get hot and you're going to be playing for a chance to go to the Super Bowl or be playing in the Super Bowl. But I have one more question in closing, and we'll kind of we'll wrap it up here. I contend here, and I'm not a Vikings fan, but I've since the Vikings have drafted JJ McCarthy, I've been about it, and I've always said the Vikings are my second favorite team, but I'm unfortunately a Cowboys fan, and I've basically mortgaged that. I have changed my allegiance from being a Cowboys fan to a Vikings fan in the fact that JJ McCarthy is going to work. And he won my college a national title. He's going to win the Vikings a Super Bowl. So, but and I have a lot of Vikings friends too. And, so if they're happy, I'm happy. And I still contend though that there are a segment of Vikings fans that say they are fans, but I actually think they want the Vikings to keep losing because they don't want something happy to be happy. That's just nothing about it that could make them happy. And they would be the people that if they won the Super Bowl, well, we should have won by 2 scores instead of 1.
So I love that you brought this up because I've had this conversation with many people before, a lot of them friends, family. It's nobody that I really know, but I do agree with that. And here's what I would say. I don't know if I necessarily agree 100% with how you said it, but I do agree with the premise. Here's what I would liken it to. Baseball and the Chicago Cubs lost a little bit of romanticism when they finally won the World Series. To a degree, the Minnesota Vikings are the Chicago Cubs of the NFL. And I think
I
some
never thought of
Vikings
it that
fans,
way.
the identity of being a Vikings fan is pain and suffering. And they won't allow themselves to think, or you can't even process or understand what it would be like when they inevitably kick the door down and win. I do believe that that's going to happen. Again, there's nothing that says it ever will happen. It still might take 50 more years, but I do believe they will win a Super Bowl at some point. But I'm with you. I do think there are a lot of people that when the Vikings win a Super Bowl, I don't know if they'll truly celebrate. I think they'll more have trouble understanding what's happening. Now, I think we all will to a degree because it's the Minnesota Vikings winning a Super Bowl. But yeah, I do think there are just some Vikings fans. They're more happy. I don't think they want the team to be 4-13, but I think they're more happy when the team has those heartbreaking losses because that has become the identity of being the Minnesota Vikings. It's also, to a degree, been the identity of being the Minnesota Wild, being the Minnesota Timberwolves, being the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Even though they won 2 World Series, it was the identity of the Minnesota Twins when they were losing 19 straight playoff games. 19. You would think, Dylan, you would win one of those games just for showing up because you're there. You would win one of them. They still lost 19 games in a row, not in the same playoffs, obviously, but over the course of 20 years. I just think that's the psyche of a Minnesota sports fan. A lot of people, I don't even know if they do it intentionally. They just, yeah, I mean, you have to think about this. Okay. So if I do my math, I think you were technically alive for the Cowboys' last Super Bowl, probably in
I
diapers,
was
maybe a bassinet, like
funny
8 months.
story. I was 1 year old, and there is a picture in a scrapbook of because my dad was he doesn't really have a team anymore, but when growing up, my dad was a Steelers fan, and there's a picture of my dad in my rocking chair of him in a Steelers crew neck and me in some little Steelers outfit. That was the last time the Cowboys won the Super Bowl.
So that's how long it's been. But okay, let's just say January 1st of 1992. You're born in Minneapolis. That would make you 32 years old today. 32 and a half years old, right? Is my math correct? 92, 2002. Yeah, I think that's right. 32 years old. Yeah, that'd be right. 32.
33, yeah.
Yeah. You know nothing but heartbreak except for a few Gopher Hockey National Championships. And oh, by the way, they should get credit. The Minnesota Lynx, who are going to win their 5th WNBA title this year, book it. It's going to happen. They should get credit for that. But if you're talking the 4 major Minnesota sports, eventually we'll put the Minnesota United in there. But in my opinion, they haven't been around long enough, although they had heartbreak of their own a few years ago, giving up like 3 goals in 5 minutes, which never happens in soccer.
Ooh.
Yet somehow they did it to not win the MLS or make it to the MLS
Minnesota
championship.
sports thing.
Yep, exactly. They could do it. But it's just the psyche of the Minnesota sports fan. It's all most of us know. I vaguely remember the 1991 World Series. I would have been 5. So again, vaguely remember it. I remember having a Homer hanky, being in a living room cheering. Didn't really know what I was cheering for. I knew who I was cheering for, but I didn't really understand the game of baseball. All I have
Did you
is
get to go to the parade?
No, don't even remember a parade.
Okay.
Don't even remember. I knew there was one, but don't remember it being a thing.
Well,
I remember
I
waving a Homer hanky and that stupid winter blizzard of 1992 people won't shut up about. Or maybe it was 91. I think it was 91. That dumb winter blizzard that we talk about every year.
The reason I ask about it was because when we had Dan Minnesota on, he talks about how, because he would have been in high school at the time, and he's talked
Yeah,
about how his parents have a picture of them at the parade, but they claim they were never there. And
yeah,
he
because
didn't get to go get
they didn't
taken out
take
of
him.
school.
Yeah.
So I was going to see if you had one up on him on that one, but
No, Dan's a good guy, by the way. I'm glad you've had him on the show. He does good work chronicling the pain of being a Minnesota sports fan. But Dylan, it doesn't always have to be pain. It won't always be pain. Just because we haven't won a championship in what is it now, like 100 some combined seasons, when you factor in all the four major teams, it's a ridiculous amount. Well, I guess just do the math, just times what, 32 years by four teams. So what, roughly 120 seasons? That's a ridiculous amount. But there's still fun along the way. And I'm gonna leave it with this. I try and do this with people, Dylan. And keep in mind, I take sports.
128 years.
Okay, thank you. It's 128 years and seasons. So I take sports. I don't want to say seriously because I really don't. Like most Vikings losses within 2 minutes, I go, whatever. Because guess what? I still wake up and go to work the next day. Right? My life doesn't change that much. Sports are meant to be a distraction and they're meant to be fun. They're real life, but don't take them too seriously. And keep in mind, all I do is watch sports. But you know what matters more? Your family and your friends. Okay? So keep that in perspective when you get really mad that JJ McCarthy threw a pick six in week 3 of the Vikings season. It matters, but it also doesn't really matter. Just enjoy life. And when these Minnesota teams finally kick down the door, rub it in the face of Wisconsin because you know they would do the same to us.
That's right. That is a good way to end on. So Ross, thank you again for coming on. Hopefully it's not 2.5 years, but
was
the
it
time
really that
between
long?
I want to say it would have been like April of 22, or was it it would have been April of 23. So no, it would have been about a year and a half.
Okay, but if we wait,
so.
let's say we wait a year and a half. Has any Minnesota team won a championship in a year and a half?
Well, here's the deal: is if a Minnesota sports team wins a championship, you are coming on the next episode. That's
okay.
Well, and you're a recurring guest, so I don't know if you ever listen to Pardon My Take, but they have the rule is
Yeah.
You're a recurring guest. You have to come on anytime we ask you to now.
Yeah, well, that is
the same rule applies to here.
Yeah. Okay, great. And I will. I really appreciate this. I'll always talk sports as long as the schedule aligns. I'll always do it. I mean, heck, we made this one work. I think you wanted to record yesterday, but I was on a boat, believe it or not, on the St. Croix River for a work event, and it was about 58 degrees and rainy. But you know what? It was still free, and the food was great, and the company was even better. So we'll take what we can get.
You can't complain about that.
Yeah. We'll
so
take what we can get.
So thank
and
you
the beer
again,
and the beer was free.
Oh, even better. But thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you go follow Ross and follow his podcast as well, Minnesota Sports Chat. If you pop it up on YouTube or anywhere you get your podcast, it'll pop up. It's a great listen to. So make sure you go check him out there. But that wraps up this week's episode. We'll talk to you next week.